In this lecture, we are going to cover some of the issues involved with school shootings. First, we're going to look at school shootings by situation. This graph was developed by the K-12 school shooting database. And here we're looking at school shootings from 1970 to 2022. And they're broken out by situation. The K-12 school shooting database gathers data from news sources and law enforcement sources. They use a broad definition and include cases where a gun is brandished, is fired, or a bullet hits school property for any reason. The database includes shootings at school events such as football games and suicides. These are not counted in other sources. And you go, why do these things matter? They're not what pops into our head when we think about school shooting. Right. Well, it's really important to capture the diversity of events. We also need to think about the different ways we can prevent firearm violence, right? And risk factors for something such as the escalation of interpersonal conflicts or a drive-by shooting that might impact a school are going to be different from the risk factors for an active shooter attack, and the prevention strategies, while having some commonalities, are going to differ in important ways. The majority of the cases, in this case 756, involved disputes that escalated into armed confrontations. The second largest category is that of accidental shootings. I have to admit, I was really surprised by this. Now, accidental shootings tended to involve accidental discharge of school resource officers' weapons. Another category that I didn't expect was intimate partner violence. Intimate partner violence, looking at this allows us to capture shootings that happen when a staff member or a faculty member's significant other comes to the school in pursuit of their victim. And adolescents, also commit intimate partner violence. Suicides. Suicides are another really important category. We had 148 suicides on school property. And this is something we don't often think about suicide when we think about gun violence. But firearms are actually particularly important when we're thinking about suicides, particularly, or in suicide attempts, particularly those that young men engage in. So if we're looking at this, we see that disputes are the most common. You can kind of think to yourself, how is targeting a dispute different from thinking about somebody who is planning a mass shooting? This graph shows us the number of people who were shot, both fatal shootings and woundings, on K-12 school property between the years 2018 and 2022. 2022 was a bad year. We had the largest number of school shootings, and we had the highest rate of deaths as a result. Now, there are a number of factors that are at play here, and gun violence in schools shares many commonalities with gun violence in other settings. The increased availability of firearms is particularly important, especially since the majority of these are disputes. When we have young people who have firearms that are easily available to them and they're carrying those, and we can think about impulsivity and aggression combined. Somebody is making a snap decision. When we're looking at mass shooters, most juveniles who engage in a mass shooting, they're going to be looking for the easiest way to get a weapon, and many of them are using firearms that they got from home, right? Because that's what was closest to them. It was the easiest thing for them to access. When we think about school shootings, our minds go directly to what are called active shooter events. These account for a very small number of school shootings, but the number of deaths that occur in these instances is much higher. Now, there is no legal definition of the term active shooter. Federal government agencies use this definition, that an active shooter is an individual actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a confined and populated area. For the purposes of our class, because we are focused on school shootings, we are going to use the K-12 school shooting database definition. An active shooter event occurs when a shooter has killed and or wounded victims, either targeted or random, within the school campus during one continuous episode of violence. So this is distinguished from a spree killing, where an individual kills or injures others in different places over time, right? So they'll move from one location to another. We can see from the graphic, which is showing us the number of people killed in active shooter attacks at schools each year, that active shooters on school campuses, this is not something new. What is new is the number of casualties that result from each incident. One of the findings from the database is that historically the most common weapon has been a relatively small caliber firearm, like a .22. And the developers of the database argue that, kids are using what they can get their hands on. Right? And this means that often that they're taking, right, these firearms from their homes. Right? So in the past, the .22 was what was used because it's easily available. Now, it's possible to access firearms that are semi-automatic and could easily be converted to near automatic function. This means that although active shooters on school campuses are low frequency events, the number of casualties is going to be higher because, when you're using an AR-15, the amount of damage that you can do, right, is much higher than with a .22. And this is also, when we're thinking about school shootings, especially active shooters, it's really important for families to store their firearms properly, right, to ensure that people who are thinking about engaging in active shooter events can't access them. I mean, safe storage is also super important because when we look at the other kind of the shooting that's most common, right, the one that involves, right, an escalation of disputes, right, when young people are getting guns, right, they're finding them in their homes, or if they're accessing an illegal firearm, it's one that they were able to purchase, right, in the community. So this is particularly a problem where I'm from originally in New York State, where New York City has relatively strict gun laws, but in the southern states, on the eastern seaboard, the gun laws are pretty lax, and we have stores that are selling guns to straw buyers, right? And these straw buyers are then funneling. You're not supposed to sell, if you're a gun store owner, you're not supposed to sell to a straw buyer. A straw buyer is someone who's purchasing a weapon, either for somebody who can't have a weapon legally, or they're purchasing right, to move it on and sell it in the illegal market. Right? And so we have sales to these straw buyers that are being made, and then these weapons are being funneled into this pipeline, right, up to New York City. And then these weapons on the street that are easily available, right, are, leading to some significant firearm violence. Also, right, thinking about safe storage again, because it's really important, when another really important source of illicit firearms on the street that people are using, these are coming from thefts from people's homes, where people have a firearm in the home, someone breaks in and takes it easily because the weapon is not secured. So, right, I'm making a plug for proper storage, right, because proper storage can really help decrease, right, violence that we see. All right, in the next lecture, we're going to look at threat assessment and what that looks like in the school context.